Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I have Jeff Klein joining me. And if you've been listening to the guest series on the Author to Authority podcast, you will know that about the last 4 or 5 episodes have been with people that I just met at a podcast conference. And I'm not even going to try to say it because I messed it up the last 3 times. But I was at an amazing podcast one-day conference in December, just before Christmas. And there was a lot of great teaching and training, but we got to do on-the-spot interviews with an amazing array of experts. And Jeff is one of those people. Now, from the elevator pitch to keynote speeches, Jeff guides people to the right words for each situation. As a speaker and trainer, he has received rave reviews, speaking over 800 times. This man knows how to speak, reaching tens of thousands of business professionals. He is the author of 30 Seconds to Success, Generating Referrals with Your Elevator Pitch, and the upcoming Speaking as a Business Strategy, 9 Laws to Business Speaking Success. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you, Kim. It's Potapalooza.
Oh, thank you. We're 3 hours ahead here from when the conference is, and I'm getting tired. So I was doing a couple of them, and it was not coming to me. I thought, that's it. I'm done.
I understand.
So Jeff, share a little bit about yourself. Like how have you come to speak 800 times, and how did you come to help others be able to speak well and communicate effectively and deliciously?
Thanks, Kim. Excuse me. I call what's happened to me career-wise a series of fortunate accidents. I come from the film business, which led me to the advertising business, which led me to speaking as a way to promote. I was teaching the elevator pitch because I went to a meeting for CEO Space in Dallas where they were teaching the elevator pitch, and I clicked with that education, joined CEO Space, and started speaking there at their meetings and helping. And then one day somebody said, "Hey, Jeff, would you come do that same lesson at our group?" And I made sure it was okay. And I went and did that. And I recognized that I was promoting both my business and the organization by doing that. And then somebody at that event said, "Would you come do this at our group?" And then so on and so on. And I started speaking regularly about that. And I did promote my ad agency. I did get new clients. And I figured a bunch of things out along the way.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. Was there a time in there when you weren't comfortable speaking? Like, was it hard for you to transition into that? Or was it kind of something where it was like all of a sudden your passion and your purpose came together?
A lot of that was part of it, Kim. I'm doing what I was really supposed to be doing all along now, with helping people be comfortable speaking and get better at it, whether it's for 30 seconds or for 90 minutes or 4 hours. But I never suffered from the fear of speaking, fortunately for me. Mm-hmm. We all know it's one of the top 2 fears. And Jerry Seinfeld's joke is that means that half the people at a funeral would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy.
I love that.
Yeah. but for me, it came naturally. The most nervous I ever was as a speaker was the first time I had to speak to a room full of people who really knew me well.
Okay.
More nervous in front of people I would see again than in front of a room full of strangers.
True. I hadn't thought of it that way.
But
okay.
Now I'm if you need, I carry my stuff with me. If I'm at a meeting and somebody says our speaker didn't show up, can you fill in? My answer is always yes.
Actually, I can do that too.
Yeah, it's good.
Give me a general topic, give me about 1.5 minutes to prep, and I can talk probably for about 30 minutes.
Well, and I even have my worksheets. Part of what I teach folks, actually, I have my worksheets and order forms in the trunk of the car.
There you
So I'm
go.
ready to get business from a speaking gig, from an impromptu gig.
Yes. Yes. I should do that because I do have one or two speeches that I can just do like that. So, not that we're doing anything in person here where I live in Ontario. We just found out that Omicron is going nuts, and they just slashed all of our how many people can get together. So we will just be able to get together as a family for Christmas, but we cannot even add one more person because we will.
Wow. Well, at least we've learned by now how to make virtual speaking successful. I've definitely been made a pivot in what I was teaching folks, because the groups, there was maybe a month or two, some of them took off, but by last summer they were meeting virtually, and they still wanted speakers. So and actually one of the silver linings of the whole pandemic for me has been that I have clients in more places now, and there are groups that will, even if they're in person, they'll bring in virtual speakers.
Yes.
So I can help place folks from other places to other places. And that's been very advantageous for people in my business.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So Jeff, I know you've come prepared as a speaker and coach. You've come prepared to be able to talk to my audience of entrepreneurs, professionals, speakers, and coaches. Can you please share what you've prepared for us today?
Well, the thing is, there are two shoe leather ways and cost-effective ways to promote your business at that level: coaches, speakers, authors, and coaches, entrepreneurs, authors. The first is networking. Getting out there and having a good elevator pitch that'll help you get referrals, personal or virtual. And the second is speaking.
Yes.
Those are the two most cost-effective ways to grow your business. And I have become an expert at both.
So talk to me, Jeff, if you're an entrepreneur, how do you go about getting speaking gigs? Like, that's always been my question. I do speak a bit. I'm hoping to speak more in 2022, but like, where do you find these places to speak?
Well, first you have to identify who your audience is. Who's your customer? And once you do that, then you figure out what groups they hang out in. Sometimes it's Rotary, sometimes it's a Chamber of Commerce. If it's business owners, those are great places to go. And there are a lot of networking groups that bring in speakers, whether it's monthly or weekly, or but they bring in speakers a few times a year. Meetup is a great tool. Here in Dallas, we use Meetup a lot. I know I've found that other cities use Eventbrite more, and those are the two main meeting tools. But then there are specific direct tools for speaking. There's a company called Speakertunity, and I'll provide links for those for you, that they actually give you can buy a list of meetings in your town.
Okay.
And then there's podcasts, which we're dealing with today, of course, and being on podcasts that target people you want to meet is a great way to expand your speaking and your network. If you're trying to sell a book, you need to get in front of a bunch of people and tell a good story, and they'll buy it. You've got to be able to solve their problems. Sometimes it's church groups. Sometimes it's civic groups. But the main answer to that question, Kim, is do it. Don't think about it.
How do you connect with them though? Like, if you've never been a part of the group, or something like that, you may know all these groups, but how do you approach them?
I like to start with email. Some people will do phone call, but I like to send an email first. So let's say, so authors. I get on Google and I find out that there is a writing group, a creative writing group in town. On Meetup, I find out that there's the Association of the Nonfiction Authors Association, where I have spoken, and I contact the contact person for that meeting. I ask them if they bring in speakers and that I'd like to offer my topic. and that's how it starts. And sometimes I'll never hear back. And sometimes if it's a group I really want to be in front of and I don't hear back through Meetup, I'll go to LinkedIn and I'll find them, because sometimes people don't pay attention to Meetup emails.
True.
And so I'll find them on LinkedIn and I'll try to request a connection there. Hey, I'm looking to speak at your group. I can introduce you to other speakers as well. That kind of thing is beneficial as well, where it's not all about me. I have would your group find it beneficial to learn about X?
Yes.
Yeah. One of the sentences in my opening email is, I know how difficult it is to find quality speakers for your group. Because for a lot of my audiences, the ones that don't pay a speaker fee, the booker is a volunteer or a voluntold.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't at the meeting Wednesday. We put you in charge of speakers.
It's funny.
And that can be a thankless job. Yeah, that can be a thankless job until you meet somebody like me, where I have a whole website full of folks that I can help send their way. But they're out there hitting Google as well.
Yes. Well, it's funny. We have the voluntold word in our house, and so the kids made it very clear to people that they were being voluntold to do things.
Yeah. And they can keep telling themselves that, but sometimes you're a kid and that just comes with the job title. Right. So, but it happens in those associations and civic groups. And if you're targeting, creative people, there's groups for that. If you're targeting women in business, there's groups for that. If you're targeting women in business, there is a women's group for just about every profession. So there's women engineers and women attorneys and women in IT and et cetera, et cetera. So that one can be beneficial as well. And even if you're not targeting women from the get-go, you might find out it's not a bad idea.
That is cool. Thank you, Jeff. Because sometimes you just you kind of know what you need to do, but you're just not sure where to start. And one thing I've learned too is it is kind of a numbers game, right? Like you've just got to put yourself out there until you start getting yeses. Right.
And from the speaking standpoint, it's a whole lot easier than if you're just out as a salesperson. It takes there's less no's to get to that first yes, because they really need speakers. You just want to be talking to the right audience.
Yeah. One thing I found effective is I had an opportunity locally to speak at a couple of storytelling events. So I spoke at Mo Mondays, so I got to share my story on Mo Mondays. I was at another event where I got to share the same story. So actually both events were within a week or so of each other. So I paid to have the videos, to get the copies of the videos of that. And now it's on my website. So I can now direct people, if they want a sample of my speaking, I can direct them to me speaking on a stage.
That's very useful to have.
If you get an opportunity to speak and you can get someone to film you speaking it, that's a good thing to have, because it makes you stand out. It's like, I can prove I'm a good speaker. Here's that 7 to 10 minute clip of me telling my story succinctly, interestingly, with a good point to it. Leave people off encouraged, right? I take them on that emotional heroes roller coaster.
Yeah. And sometimes that can be your compensation. There are, where you make the right arrangements with the people who are doing the event.
Yeah. So, it's beneficial to have those, those pieces of proof, and it does not cost a lot of money. Even if, you have a place where you can stand and make it look like you're speaking in front of a group of people, and have, your family member film you, but make sure it's well done, right? Like you don't want it looking cheesy.
I would, if you're gonna, I would, before that, I would see if you can hire a local videographer person to come to your live event.
But if you haven't done live events yet, you can make it look like you've done a live event.
Yeah, it's better to do something like this and share that recording, in my opinion.
It depends on how comfortable you are speaking. I mean, I could do it. I could speak to an empty room and nobody would know I was speaking to an empty room.
Sure.
I mean, I've spoken enough to the camera and felt like I was speaking to an empty room.
My recommendation was use your webinars and things like that. You don't need to do it. You don't need to stage a thing where it looks like you're speaking to an audience. If you record your webinars, you are speaking to an audience. So yeah, and they can see what kind of, that you're a quality speaker and things like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. But sometimes it's also even just good practice.
Well, you should definitely practice, and you should video yourself practicing for sure. Yes, definitely. But remember, when you're out selling your books and stuff, the rotary is not practice. When you're in front of a live audience, that's never practice. That is true business.
Yes, I totally agree.
There are speakers who refer to that stuff as practice, and I vehemently disagree with that approach. Practice at home, in front of a mirror, in front of your family, in front of your stuffed animals, in front of your pets. But once you're in front of another person that doesn't know you, that's not practice. That's your job. That's where you're working.
And it needs to be professional, whether you're doing it to an audience of one or whether you're doing it to an audience of thousands.
That's correct. And sometimes you'll be told there'll be 30 people there, and you show up and there'll be 3.
But you see, this is the thing. People get discouraged, but they don't know who those 3 people are.
What I firmly believe, Kim, is the right people are there.
Yes. Yep.
And you don't know who they are. You don't know who they know. You don't know what kind of influence they have.
Exactly. So give them your best. So
Absolutely.
What kind of talks work well, would you say?
Okay, so very good question. Nowadays, audiences and businesses want results. The days of the motivational speaker are over. The days of the inspirational speaker are over. You can inspire your audience to do something specific. You can, motivate them to get some results. But the days and except for celebrities, that's always doesn't account for that. Doesn't count for that rule. But you need to show what problem you solve. I mean, you need to do this as an author in the first place anyway, right? I mean, if you're talking about
an entrepreneur.
Yeah, if we're talking about nonfiction, if we're talking about fiction, that's a different conversation. But if you wanted to speak to promote a fiction story, a novel, I would come up with something business related or personal development related. So if your client's, that's funny. If your hero or heroine's journey is about, overcoming adversity as a bottom line thing, then do a quick talk about how people have overcome adversity, and tell a story from history, and then tell a teaser story about your character, and then shut up.
Yeah. You know what? Something I've learned is it's just as important to know when to speak as when not to speak.
Yeah. In art, I used to be, again, in marketing and advertising, we talked a lot about white space on a print ad, and the silences are the white space when you're speaking.
Yeah. And you have to have them. Like I've been taking speaker training and coaching the last few years.
Good for you.
And sometimes the pauses are more important, because you need to give time for people sometimes to reflect on what you've just said.
That's
and
right.
If you move on too quickly, they miss it.
And at the end of the talk, when you ask them to buy something, you really need to make sure that's the last thing you say.
Yes. With a
And it doesn't have to be time to buy my book. It can be, if you don't invest in yourself, who will?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes I find too, you have to give them a clear, strong call to action. Like you have to tell them what it is you want them to do.
You need an order form.
Yeah.
Always have an order form, even if you're just selling one book.
Yep. Or it could be something like if you're talking in a live event, if you're ready to change your life and you want my book, follow me back to my table, right? Like tell them what it is that you want them to do.
Exactly.
Come grab an order form, or if it's pre-organized, you would then instruct, the helpers or whatever to hand out the order form. I mean, that's something that's really powerful too, is to, already have that in place so that they've already got it and people can just raise their hand and they get the order form and they're already filling it out.
Right. Well, you want to give it to everybody.
Yes.
And then after that, say, hey, and now what I do is I have people say, I hand out the form a few minutes before the end and say, I'm going to be giving something away. He put your business card in the bucket, and what I'm giving away is on this form.
Nice.
So they drop it in the bucket, and then you give one away, and that helps people want to buy it.
Mm-hmm. Plus, now you have the contact information too.
Absolutely.
Wow.
You bet.
Well, Jeff, if people have enjoyed what we've been talking about today and they want to connect with you, how can they find you?
The best, easiest way is to go to speakercoop.com/education.
Okay.
And sign up for some free stuff. And there's a button there to schedule an appointment with me.
That is awesome. And the link is in the show notes. So if you kind of missed that, just go to the show notes. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I have really enjoyed this conversation today. So this has been Jeff Klein and Kim Thompson-Pinder on the Author to Authority podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the very next episode. Bye now.